Okay, cool. So again, what I'd like to do for this second little bit here, go through whatever questions you had. I'll start by talking about at least, at most, and exactly. So why don't we start by going through those? That'll probably take us 10 minutes, give or take, and then we can come back in any particular questions people have. Talk about that. So when it comes to at least, at most, and exactly, I really hope the audio is working here, but if it isn't, it isn't. Oh well, we don't care. Doing the best we can. So when it comes to at least, the thing to remember with at least, right? Let's start off with at least one. Let's say there's at least one F. How do we say there's at least one F?
If you grab one, you grab another one, don't you say?
So that's at most,
Oh.
right? So at least, it's okay. You got it, at least, yeah, right. You're in the right ballpark, and you got the right idea for at most. So here's the thing. When we're thinking about at least, right, it's setting the minimum. It sets the floor, right? So at least tells us here's the minimum number of things that are out there. Right? So if we say there's at least one F, right, we're saying there's at least one F, right? How would we capture that using FOL? Yeah, we use our existential, right? So at least one F, there's at least one thing in the domain that's an F, right? There might be lots more, but this sentence is going to be true if and only if there's at least one thing in the domain that satisfies the predicate F. Yeah? Now then, so easy way to start with at least one. Now, how would we say at least two? Right? So the trick to remember with at least is that we always have the same number of quantifiers as the minimum number we're after. Right? So if we want to say there's at least two F's, we can say, okay, there's an X, there's a Y. Yeah, nice. X is an F, Y is an F, and the important thing, the last little conjunct, this does a lot of work, is that they're different things. So again, let's go through this. What does this say, right? If we just look at this bit, this tells us, hey, we can reach into the domain and pull out an X and a Y, and they're both F's. But if we just stop there, nothing prevents us from using the same thing as X and Y. That is, our two grabbers might have grabbed the exact same thing. So if we want to guarantee that there's at least two, we have to say, and the things they grabbed are different. So this tells us there's at least two F's. Okay, before we go on, again, we get what the clauses do. We have X's quantifiers for the number we want. They satisfy the relevant predications, and they are different. Now, suppose I wanted to say that there's at most one F. Right? So again, at least sets the minimum, right? It sets the minimum. At most, well, it does the opposite. It sets the max. Right? At most tells us, hey, here's the maximum number of F's you could have. Right? So what's one way we could do at most one F? Yeah, right? Easiest way to do at most one is to just say, well, it ain't the case that there's at least two. And this is going to be true if there are none or there's only one, which is exactly what we want with at most one. So we can do it this way, right? But we can also do it with the universals. And we very helpfully actually heard the description, right, just a few minutes ago, right? The idea with the one with the universals, if you reach in and you think you've grabbed 2, then what's actually the case? Then they have to be the same. So if we want to do at most 1, 2 different ways to do at most 1. So a few helpful tricks to remember here, right? First one, right? If it's at least n, right? Then you have n existentials. And you're going to need the clauses to say they're different. If you have at most n, how many quantifiers you're going to have? N plus 1. Doesn't matter if they're existentials or universals, it will always be n plus 1. Again, this is the handy thing to remember. This is a mnemonic you can use. If I said at least 3, right? Let's say there's at least 3 Fs. Okay? Well, we know there's going to be 3 quantifiers. Each one is going to be an F. Right? And then all we have to do is just add our clauses at the end to say they're different. They're different, and they're different, and they're different. Beautiful. Doesn't matter how many we say, the process is actually very straightforward. The sentence might look terrifying, but actually it's really, really straightforward. Okay, so that's at least and at most. Now, what do we do when we have exactly? In fact, there's 2 ways we can express exactly. Yeah.
That what you just wrote, that we say at most 2, just put it by the negation?
Well, so if we just put a negation in front, right, this is going to give us at most 2. Right? So here's the other thing. Again, we can use the mnemonic, right? Whenever we have at most n plus 1 is the relevant one. So if we have negated 3, it's at most 2. But when we think about exactly, at most and at least, right? The minimum is 1, the maximum is 1, so there is exactly 1. Is that a question? No, okay, sorry. So, one way you can do it, one easy, direct way you can do it, is you do literally the conjunction of at least 1 and at most 1. That's a perfectly good answer. But when we think about exactly, especially exactly 1, there's 2 ways we can express it. We can say there's exactly 1 F. Right? What's the other way we could express it? What's the other English expression that entails there's exactly 1 F? The, right? The definite article. So if we say the F, that means there's exactly 1 F. So here is the formulation to know whenever you see the blah, 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 right? The F. We say there's at least one thing that's F. For anything, if it's F, then it's identical to our first thing. At least 1 and at most 1. This tells us the F. There's exactly 1 F. Now suppose we wanted to say some things about our f. We wanted to say the f is g. So the dog is a vegetarian. I don't care what f and g is, right? The f is a g. What would we do? Well, we take our the and we just bolt on that clause. Bless you. So again, the things to see here, right? If we have exactly, you're going to end up with two quantifiers, one existential and one universal. Right? So here's the reasoning. Because we need to say at least and at most. So you're always going to have the existential to tell you the at least, and the universal is giving you the at most. The existential gives you the minimum. The universal puts the cap on it, forces you into just one. Okay. Before we press on, any questions on at least, at most, or exactly / the? Yes.
Do exactly so.
Yeah, cool. Let's think about that. How would we do exactly to? So we're going to have to say this, right? Let's do exactly two f's, right? So x is an f and y is an f. Now we want them to be at least 2. So how do we get at least 2? X and y aren't identical, right? So this guarantees we have at least 2. Now what we need to do is to guarantee there's at most 2. So let's think, how could we add to this to guarantee that there's at most 2?
We say that any other one we pick out is one of those two.
Nice, right? So no matter what, if we reach into the domain and we grab something and it's an f, then we must have grabbed either x or y. So we can put it this way. For all z, if z's an f, then either z is x or z is y. I think I need one more. So again, let's go through the clauses because it looks scary, but it's not, right? This tells us there's at least 2. And this tells us there's at most 2. Note, if we didn't have this clause, this to say that x and y are distinct, we wouldn't have gotten guaranteed 2. So we need all 3 parts. And again, all 3 parts, we can see what they do. This tells us it's one of these things. This tells us it's one of these things. Oh, they're different. Cool. We've got the at least 2. And then this is telling me, hey, no matter who you grab, it's going to be one of our first 2. Again, it's basically using the process. Just take the clauses that do the job we want them to do. Okay. So, some things I might ask you. Some things I might ask you. I might say things like, Igmar doesn't trust the vegetarian. Igmar doesn't trust the vegetarian. So first question to ask is, how many vegetarians are there? Exactly one. Right? So there's at least one thing that's a vegetarian. There's at most one thing that's a vegetarian. And what is this thing like? Igmar doesn't trust it, right? So again, this is the kind of thing that we can build, right? We can read off the sentence to help us see the logical structure. Okay. Cool. So again, with these, if we're doing at least, we know how to do it. If we're doing it most, we know how to do it. If we're doing exactly or the, we know how to do it. Okay. Other questions? Other topics people want to go over?
The diagram interpretation.
Diagrammatic. So importantly, with regards to those, I will always give you the option to draw them. Right? I'm never going to give you one and ask you to read off of it. So that homework exercise is just because it's good to be able to do it, but I'm not going to ask you a question like it. That's being pragmatic. Other questions?
The across semantic notions with the two place predicates.
Yes. Good. Good. So this is useful. Something to remind ourselves of when we're doing extensions of predicates, right? When we're writing our interpretations and things like this, there's going to be two types of predicates you might come across. One-place predicates or two-place predicates, right? So let's just say that F is a one-place predicate, right? And let's have our domain be objects A and B, right? Well, to list the extension of F, we can just list the objects that satisfy it, right? So we might put A and B. Cool. So everything in the domain is an F. But now let's suppose that we have a two-place predicate, let's say R. Our two-place predicate, to write the extension of our two-place predicate, can we just list names? No. Importantly, we cannot just list names. We have to list them in the ordered pair that they satisfy the relationship. So for example, here, I'll do a diagrammatic interpretation and then we'll turn it into one of these. Suppose we have A and B. And these are our three relations. So let's translate this diagrammatic one into a long form one, right? Let's fill out the extension of R. How would I write the extension of R based on this?
A, B, A, and B.
So A, B, A. So the important thing I want to emphasize here, right? If we do the extensions of two-place predicates, it needs to be in ordered pairs. It's telling us, hey, if you fill this thing in for the first spot in the relation, you can fill this second one in. Again, if you give me just a list of names in a two-place relation, it's not correct. And I want to emphasize, I think I said this earlier, but I will point it out again. I'm looking for excuses to give you points, right? If you get halfway through, cool. That can give you some like half point or something along these lines, right? If you get part of an interpretation right, well, okay, maybe half a point or something, right? Charity reigns. That's the important thing here. Okay. Other questions? Please.
So are they going to be the identity questions?
I mean, let's put it this way. I'm trying to answer the ones that I think are going to be helpful for you. So when she asked about the diagrammatic interpretations, and I said we don't have to worry about it, read into that what you will. But I firmly reserve the right to ask you questions along these lines. Maybe a little bit of advice for some things too, right? Thinking about the exam, and I'm sure you guys are all very clever people, and you wouldn't have gotten this far without knowing some of this, but it doesn't hurt to have someone else tell you. Think about your time and prioritize your time, right? You don't have to do the exam in the order that it is written. Maybe quickly read through it right at the beginning. Figure out, okay, this is going to take me the most time, so why don't I do this first? And then I can cycle back and do the definitions because that's going to take me a minute to do all three of them. Right? Again, plan your exam time. It's a useful thing. Oh, and also, please put your damn names on the exam sheets. Because there's nothing more annoying than that. Okay. Any last questions? Any other questions? Please. It is not. It is all written. Yeah. Yeah. Because it would be a nightmare. Yes. I'm so sorry. We have one person in here who's got a broken wrist, and I feel really bad for them because it's going to be a hell of an exam. But no, it is all written. Also, if any of you have seen my handwriting, you will know that I probably will be able to read yours because mine is atrocious. So, and if there's questions, right, this is the kind of thing we can talk about in the exam inspection. So again, to stress, last thing, I guess, with this, if there aren't any other questions, we'll do the exam inspection in the tutorials in week 8. Right? So you'll know your score and everything. I'll come with the script. I'll hand them to you. We'll put the answers on the whiteboard. We'll talk about them, answer any questions if there's problems with the order. Please double check my math because, I go through these as quickly as possible, so I'm probably going to screw up the addition somehow. Yes. So in this week, tutorials, we're going to go through that practice midterm. Yep. So if you've done the practice midterm and you don't have any questions or anything, it's okay. You don't have to come. It's all right. I'll be there anyway. But you're very welcome if you have questions and everything. Thank you guys very much. Again, good luck on all the exams, not just this one. And we'll see you all on the other side.